Hello, high-level listeners. Welcome back to another episode of our second season of our Advanced Vocabulary podcast here on YouTube. Continuing with another useful and common travel topic, we're going to talk about going through the airport and traveling by plane. We'll share some of our favorite vocabulary and expressions to describe what it's like, what we do, and how we feel about going through the airport to catch a flight.
Yes, that's right. And like always, you'll get to hear some more British vocabulary and expressions from me, Mark, and a more American style from Kat, as she's from the United States. We'll both share our routines and our thoughts about going through the airport to catch a flight. And then we'll go back through our scripts line by line to highlight the best phrases and vocabulary so you can take your English to the next level. So we'll get stuck in. I will ask Kat the first question. What do you do when you need to catch a flight?
I'm definitely one of those people who gets to the airport way earlier than I need to. I really don't like lines and feeling rushed, so I'd rather have some extra time than risk missing my flight. I always check in online before I get to the airport, so I usually just go straight to the self-check-in kiosks and print my boarding pass. It's usually pretty quick. I sometimes just have a carry-on so I can skip dropping off my bag. Next, I make my way to security. I've got my routine down. Shoes and belt off, laptop and liquids out, and everything out of my pockets and in the trays. Once I'm through security, I check the departure board to confirm my gate and then head to a cafe. I like to grab a coffee and maybe a sandwich, something light, finding a seat near my gate. This gives me a chance to relax, catch up on emails, and read a book before boarding. It's all about making the journey as stress-free as possible. All right, it's Mark's turn. What do you do when you need to catch a flight?
Whenever I have to fly, I always make sure to get to the airport well ahead of time, as in at least 3 hours before departure. I'm always stressing out about getting held up in traffic or missing my train to the airport, so better safe than sorry. When I actually get there, I head straight into the check-in counter to drop off my checked bags and get my boarding pass printed out. I don't normally hang about near the entrance. I move on to security, which is another reason I show up early. You never know how packed it's going to be. I'm quite a frequent flyer, so I've usually already got my liquids in a clear plastic bag. Then it's shoes off, electronics out in the tray so I don't get shouted at by security. Once I'm through, I can finally relax a little bit. I usually head down to my gate, then get something to eat and keep an eye on the screens in case there are any changes. Okay, so those are our two experiences. Like we said, we'll go back to the start and go through line by line, explaining, giving more examples of some of the best phrases and expressions about going through the airport. So, back to the start. Kat, how early do you like to arrive at the airport?
I'm definitely one of those people who gets to the airport way earlier than I need to. Now, this is a kind of an interesting setup. So I'm definitely, for sure, 100%, absolutely, meaning I am one of these people. I'm one of those people who gets to the airport way earlier than I need to. This is just such a common phrase to say I'm one of those people who does this. I'm one of those people who does that. It's kind of a way to, it's more than just an adjective. I'm an early person. I'm an early bird. Okay, that's a great phrase, but it's more than that. I'm one of those people who gets to the airport way earlier than I need to. And you know those people, those types of people, they have to get there early. They're rushing everyone out the door just so we can sit at the airport for about 2 hours before our flights. But it's the process of getting there. We want to make sure that we're just sitting there at the airport. So I'm one of those people who gets to the airport way earlier. Way earlier. Way earlier is much, much earlier. Okay, much, much earlier. Very early. Way earlier than I need to. So the reason we're using earlier, it's because it's earlier than the time I need to. So earlier than I need to. What about you, Mark? How early do you like to arrive at the airport?
Whenever I have to fly, I always make sure to get to the airport well ahead of time, as in at least 3 hours before departure. So the first phrase, whenever I have to fly. You can say I take a flight, you can say I catch a flight, and I fly. I have to fly. It doesn't mean I'm a bird and I have wings. It means I go on a plane and we fly. So you can say that simply. If you're taking a flight, I fly, or I am flying tomorrow. We flew to London. You can use that as a simple, easy way to say you took a plane. So whenever or every time I have to fly, I always make sure to get to the airport well ahead of time. Well ahead of time is very, very early. If my flight is at 9, well ahead of time is arriving at the airport at like 6. So that's well ahead of time. Again, 3 hours. The phrase I used to give an example was as in at least 3 hours before departure. As in is a way to say for example. So I like to arrive at the airport very, very early, for example, at least 3 hours before departure. As in at least 3 hours before departure. I can use it in other ways, especially if it's quite an extreme situation, like my friend has so many friends, as in 300 or 400, or it was a huge wedding, as in there were 500 people there. So when you want to give quite a strong example and emphasize it, as in is a good phrase for that. So both of us like to arrive nice and early, well ahead of time, or Kat said, way earlier than she needs to. So why do you get there so early?
Well, I really don't like lines and feeling rushed, so I'd rather have some extra time than risk missing my flight. So I really don't like lines. Lines is when there are people having to wait and they have to stand one behind the other, standing in line. I think, Mark, you probably use the word queue more often in British English.
Yeah, queues.
So I really don't like lines and feeling rushed. So I don't like lines and I don't like feeling rushed. Okay. Rushed is when I'm being forced to do something because I'm late. Okay. I'm feeling rushed. Okay. Oh my gosh. The flight's coming. I'm feeling very anxious. I'm feeling like I need to hurry up. I'm feeling rushed. So I'd rather have some extra time than risk missing my flight. Okay. I'd rather have some extra time than risk missing my flight. So I would rather do this than that. I'd rather have some extra time than risk missing my flight. If you risk something, that means that maybe it could be okay or maybe it could be terrible. This is a risk. We don't know, but a risk is that it's probably going to turn out badly. Like I'm going to miss my flight. That could be a risk. I don't want to take those risks. So I'd rather have some extra time than risk missing my flight when the flight has left without me. All right, Mark, it looks like we both like to get there, so we're both those kind of people. Why do you get there so early?
Because I'm always stressing out about getting held up in traffic or missing my train to the airport, so better safe than sorry. So I'm always stressing out. In these episodes, we like to use more familiar, casual language. So a phrasal verb for stress is stress out. I'm stressing out, I'm worrying, or I'm nervous. I'm always stressing out. I'm always nervous, I'm always worried about getting held up in traffic. So if I am in my car and trying to go to the airport, the car in front of me is holding me up. It's slowing me down and I can't drive as quickly as I need to. If you're driving through the city centre during rush hour, you will get held up by other cars. Traffic will block you, stop you, and slow you down. If I'm too slow, I might miss my flight, so I'm stressing out about getting held up in traffic or missing my train to the airport. That has happened before. I have done that. So 3 hours early sounds extreme, but it's better safe than sorry. Better safe than sorry. This is a fixed expression, better safe than sorry. It means it's better to be too cautious than take a risk. If I am 3 hours early and I get there on time and I'm bored at the airport, that's better than missing my flight. Missing my flight, I have to buy a new ticket, I have to change my plans. It's stressful just to think about. So it's better safe than sorry. It's better to be too cautious than take any risk. So that's why I get there so early. Better safe than sorry. So when you arrive at the airport, what is the first thing that you do?
Now, I always check in online before I get to the airport. So I usually just go straight to the self-check-in kiosk and print my boarding pass. So this is something I do every time I fly. I always check in online. Okay, so when we check in to our flight, it's just like checking into a hotel. We give our name, our number, and we're here. We're coming. We want to take the flight, right? So I'm checking in. Usually you can check in between 24 hours and 48 hours of your flight. So I always check in online. You can check in at the airport or you can check in online. Usually you get an email, check-in is ready. Check-in is available. So we want to check in online before I get to the airport. This is another thing about saving time. I don't want to be standing in line with other people who haven't checked in yet. So I usually check in online before I get to the airport. We've been using this word a lot, get to the airport, get to the airport. This is the more common verb that we use instead of arrive, okay? So I'm just getting to the airport is I'm just arriving. I'm coming to the entrance. How do you get to the airport means how do you travel to the airport. So I usually, before I get there, before I get to the airport, I check in online. So I usually just go straight to the self-check-in kiosks. Self-check-in. Self-check-in is becoming more and more popular. We don't have to stand in line to talk to somebody at the check-in desk. We have a little computer at the front of the line that helps us check in. So I checked in online, but I didn't print anything. So I usually will go to these little computers. We call them a kiosk, K-I-O-S-K, a kiosk. Check-in stand, I think, is common as well. Check-in stand, check-in kiosk, and I print my boarding pass. You've probably heard boarding pass before. It's the rectangular ticket. That means that you can get onto your plane, right? It's your boarding pass. People will ask for your identification, your passport, and your boarding pass. That's all they want to see. Boarding pass and passport, please. Boarding pass and passport, please. You'll hear this about 20 times at the airport just to show them, yes, I have a ticket. Here it is. I would like to get on my plane. Here's my boarding pass. All right, Mark, what about you? When you first get to the airport, what do you usually do?
When I actually get there, I head straight to the check-in counter to drop off my checked bags and get my boarding pass printed out. So Kat and I are different here. Kat is very independent. She goes to the self-check-in kiosk with the touch screen and she prints her boarding pass. She does it. I go to the counter. That is a desk with a person. A worker of the airline is sitting there behind a screen, and I have to talk to them. I do this because I want to drop off my checked bags. Checked bags are bags that are too big or too heavy to carry with you onto the plane. They take them and the airline puts them under. Usually there's a limit. It has to be 20 kilograms or 40 pounds or less, and I have to give it to them, so I drop off. When you bring your bags and show them to the airline, you drop off. Sometimes there's a self-drop off. Some airports are doing this, where you do it yourself and you don't talk to anyone. But I'm doing it the classic way. I'm going to the check-in counter with the employee to drop off my checked bags. And my grammar is different from Kat, because Kat did it herself on the kiosk. She prints her boarding pass. So she pushed the button and she did it. I get my boarding pass printed out. Because I don't print it, the employee does. The worker there types on their computer and they print the boarding pass. So I get my boarding pass printed out. They print my boarding pass. So I'm using the passive voice because I didn't do it myself at the kiosk. The worker did it for me. So I get my boarding pass printed out. All right, so we both have our boarding passes. What's next?
Well, since I went through the self-check-in kiosk, it's usually pretty quick. I usually have a carry-on, so I can skip dropping off my bag. Mark just talked about dropping off his bag. That means that he has a checked bag. A checked bag, usually you don't need to travel through the airport with your checked bag. Mark dropped his off because he gave it to the employee at the front. Now, I have a smaller bag. I have just a carry-on. So I just have a carry-on. A carry-on is the noun for a bag you physically carry onto the plane. It's my carry-on bag. Okay, so I usually just have a carry-on so I can skip dropping off my bag. When you skip something, you choose not to do it. Okay, so if I skipped breakfast, I didn't eat breakfast. If I skip dropping off my bag, I don't have a checked bag, so I can skip that. I don't have to do it. Mark dropped his off and I skipped dropping off my bag. I don't need to. I'm physically carrying my bag onto the plane. It's my carry-on. And that's usually pretty quick. Pretty quick means fairly quick, fairly fast. It's usually pretty quick. It's pretty quick. What about you, Mark? What's next?
I don't normally hang about near the entrance. I move on to security, which is another reason I show up earlier. You never know how packed it's going to be. So I don't normally hang about near the entrance. Like Kat mentioned, I dropped off my checked bags, my big ones, and I'm ready. I have my boarding pass. I don't normally hang about. Hang about is just staying in a place, wasting time, maybe waiting for my flight. I don't have anything to do. Maybe I'll look at my phone. Maybe I'll go to one of the little bookshops and find a magazine and just kill some time. I'll hang about. But I don't do this. I don't normally hang about near the entrance. Even though sometimes the entrance of airports has some restaurants or bookshops or some nice things. Sometimes they have like massage chairs, but I don't hang about near there. I'm still a little bit stressed out about missing the flight, even though I'm already in the airport. So I move on to security. Security is the name of the area where they check and they sometimes look inside your bags. You put them through a machine that can see through the bag and see what you have inside. If there's anything that you shouldn't have, they will take it out. And they're just looking to make sure nothing dangerous is getting on the plane. That whole area is security. So you go to security. I move on to security, which is another reason I show up earlier. You never know how packed it's going to be. You never know how busy it's going to be. Sometimes the lines at security are very long. Sometimes they're checking lots of different people. Maybe it's the weekend, maybe it's summer holidays, so the airport is packed, and that can take a little bit of time. How do you find going through security, Kat?
Too bad. So next I make my way to security. I've got my routine down. Shoes and belt off, laptop and liquids out, and everything out of my pockets and in the trays. I feel like I can hear security yelling at me every time I go to an American airport, okay? So they'll say things like, shoes and belt off, laptop and liquids out, everything out of your pockets and into the trays. And I feel like I've heard this phrase so often that even I've started saying it. So you hear things like this. You hear shoes and belt off. They don't even say take. They say shoes and belt should be off your feet, okay? Shoes and belt off, laptop and liquids out, okay? So this is out of your bag, off your feet, out of your bag, and everything out of your pockets, out of your pockets. You always have some spare change or a watch or even your phone, and you need to take those out of your pocket, out of your bags, off of your feet, and put them in the trays, okay? So any sort of plastic container, they call them the trays, So you've got a small tray that's plastic. It's usually those big gray containers, or sometimes they have a small little tray that you can use. Put them into the trays. So at the beginning, I said, make my way. Make your way down, make your way down. Make your way means go, find a way, move. It's a little bit of a nicer way than saying move. But when they say, I make my way, make your way, meaning go, find your way. But if someone just says go or move, it's a little rude, right? So they say, make your way down to security, find your way, go. All right. So what about you, Mark? How do you find going through security? I know it's different every single time.
Yes, I'm quite a frequent flyer, so I've usually already got all my liquids in a clear plastic bag. Then it's shoes off, electronics out in the tray, so I don't get shouted at by security. So, same as Kat. Getting through security can be a little bit stressful because there are lots of specific rules you have to follow. One of them is how much liquid you can take. I think it's 100 milliliters in most places, although I've heard more in some places, but as a rule, 100 milliliters of liquid. And you have to put those liquids like shampoo, perfume, in a clear plastic bag, a plastic bag that you can see through. Sometimes the airport has them on the side. You can take one and put your liquids in there. But because I'm a frequent flyer, I fly often. I take a lot of flights. I am a frequent flyer. A flyer, a person who flies. Like I'm a big reader. I'm a big coffee drinker. I'm a frequent flyer. So because I'm a frequent flyer, I already know this. I already know these rules. So I prepared already. I usually have got all my liquids in a clear plastic bag. So I'm ready. Then, like Kat said, it's shoes off. Shoes off. They don't even say please. Especially in America, they don't say please. They're like, shoes off, electronics out, iPads, laptops in the tray. It's like you're in the military. So it's shoes off, electronics out, So like Kat said, it's out of my bag or out of my pocket. Then it's in the tray. So electronics out, in the tray, so I don't get shouted at by security. I think Kat said yelled at, but shouted at is the same. Security loves to shout. They walk around looking very bossy. They like to shout at tourists just trying to get on their flights who are already tired and a bit stressed. But it's part of the routine. That's part of taking a flight, it seems. So for me, I'm quite well prepared and I follow the rules so I don't get shouted at by security. So I should mention quickly, there's security, the place, and then security, the people. I get shouted at by security. Those are the security guards, the border patrol. It's a special group of police-like people who work in airports and control passengers. So there's security, the place, and get shouted at by security, the people. It's the same word, but yeah, different meaning. All right, so maybe you're through or you're going through security. What do you do next?
So once I'm through security, I check the departure board to confirm my gate and then head to a cafe. I like to grab a coffee and maybe a sandwich, finding a seat near my gate. I am one of those people that I need to see that my gate exists. I have to walk all the way to my gate, confirm, then I can finally relax. Then I can go to a cafe and have a sandwich. So like Mark said, once I'm through security, so it's like I started on one end and I want to be in the airport, I have to go through. So once I am through, that means I've finished. I went through security. I was checked. Everything is fine. I'm in the airport. So once I'm through, at the moment I'm finished going through security, once I'm through security, I check the departure board. The departure board. Now, usually on your boarding pass, it tells you the terminal, which you're usually in the correct terminal when you check in. And then it tells you the gate, but sometimes the gate can change. So we've got a few vocabulary words here. Terminal is the big section, okay? So you have your airport. Then it's split into terminals, maybe A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so there's 4 or 5 terminals. Then it's split into smaller pieces, the gates. The gates. There might be hundreds of gates in one terminal. Okay, so airport, terminal, gate, cafe, me. So that's usually where I end up. So we check the departure board. The departure board, those are the planes that are leaving the airport. Arrivals are the planes coming into the airport. Double check. One time I was looking at the arrivals board and I couldn't find my gate because I was looking at the ones that were coming into the airport. And I was looking and thinking, oh my gosh, I've missed my flight. There's no way. I've checked it 1,000 times. There's no way. Well, then I just walked over 4 feet and said, oh, here's the departure board. Ah, I see. So the departure board lets you know of the planes that are leaving the airport. If you're going to pick up a friend, you might look at the arrivals board just to make sure that people are arriving on time. But don't scare yourself by looking at the wrong board. So I check the departure board to confirm my gate. If I'm going to confirm, I'm double checking. Okay, yes, this is the gate. Yes, this is the gate. Okay, I checked my phone. I checked my boarding pass. I checked the departure board. Okay, my flight really does exist. It is coming. So I check the departure board to confirm my gate and then head to a cafe. We love the word head, means go. So I'm heading to a cafe. I like to grab a coffee and maybe a sandwich, finding a seat near my gate. I have to know the gate exists. I have to sit there with my coffee, with my sandwich, in case anything changes. I'm right here. I can't relax until I'm on the plane. So, what about you, Mark? What do you do next?
I'm very similar. Once I'm through, I can finally relax a little bit. I usually head down to my gate, then get something to eat, and keep an eye on the screens in case there are any changes. So, mine starts in a similar way. Once I'm through. Through is the word for every stage of the airport. You go through check-in, through security. Even when you arrive at your destination, you go through immigration or through customs, and then you get through baggage claim and you finally exit. So through is the word for all these stages of an airport. So once I am through, I can finally relax a little bit. I usually head down to my gate. Head down, we've talked about this in other episodes. We often say head down when you're going slightly longer distance. Sometimes in an airport, a really big airport, you can walk like 5 or 10 minutes to your gate. It's really, really far away because it's just a giant building with so many different flights. So that's maybe why I say head down my gate. It's like walking through a small town. The distance is the same. So I usually head down to my gate. My gate for my flight. That becomes my gate in English. Then I get something to eat. Maybe a sandwich, maybe a snack. And I keep an eye on the screens. Kat used the more traditional word, the departure board. Maybe in the past, it was a physical board with flaps that changed like an old train station. These days, it's basically a computer monitor, right? It's like a TV. I call those the screens. There's the arrivals screen, the departure screen, the screens, the ones I need for my flight. So I keep an eye on the screens. I'm always looking up at the screens. Every 2 minutes, one bite of the sandwich. Did it change? Another bite of the sandwich. Oh. I'm always convinced the flight will be delayed or be cancelled, or they will move it to a different terminal just because it's me and my luck. So I keep an eye on the screens in case there are any changes. Maybe there are some changes. It's happened before where my flight got moved to another gate and I had to stand up and walk another kilometer to the other side of the airport. So I just keep an eye on the screens in case there are any changes. Okay, and finally, Kat, is there anything else before you board the plane?
Because I found a seat near my gate, this gives me a chance to relax, catch up on emails, or read a book before boarding. It's all about making the journey as stress-free as possible. So this gives me a chance to finally relax. Okay, I found my gate, I've got a snack, I'm nice and early. That can give me a chance to take a breath, to relax, catch up on emails. Okay, so I haven't been paying attention to my phone because I've been trying to get to the airport. So I'm going to, I missed a few emails. So I need to catch up on a few things. Or read a book before boarding. Boarding is when, just like your boarding pass, you give the person your information, you show them that you have a ticket, and you go and you find your seat. So it's the line we stand in getting ready to get on the plane, boarding. It's all about making the journey as stress-free as possible. Now, our journey is usually a long trip. Okay, so my journey starts when I leave the house in the morning. That's my journey from my house to wherever I'm flying to, or just a short trip. But whatever it is, we want it to be as stress-free as possible, meaning I want the most peaceful I can, the least stressful. So as stress-free as possible. All right, so there you go, everyone. Another advanced English episode full of great phrases and expressions to help you share your own experiences about flying in high-level English. So tell us, what do you do when you have to take a flight? Do you like to get to the airport early? Did you learn any new expressions or phrases in this episode? Please let us know. We would love to hear from you.
Yes, we definitely would. We do reply and read to every YouTube comment that we do get. So it's actually a great chance to practice with us as well. Don't forget, like always, you can get a PDF transcript of this episode and all our other ones as well. You can download them, take them offline, study them on your own. If you become a high-level listening member by clicking the link in the description, you can see the details on how to do that.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you very soon. Bye.